A strange thing happens when a woman is kind for too long without limits. People begin editing the meaning of what she gives. The first time you help them, it is generosity. The 10th time, it becomes your personality. After enough time, it becomes your responsibility. And then comes the dangerous part. The day you stop giving, they do not feel deprived of a favor, they feel robbed of something they believe belongs to them. That is how a good woman becomes convenient without realizing it. Nobody officially asks for ownership of her time. Nobody announces, your energy belongs to me now. It happens quietly. One quick favor becomes a pattern. One sacrifice becomes a role. One patient silence becomes permission. Until she becomes the woman everyone can depend on, but almost nobody remembers to protect. My dear sister, this is where kindness must become intelligent, because there are people who will never misuse your heart deliberately, but there are also people who will keep taking simply because you never taught them where you end. And sometimes the clearest test of a relationship is not how someone behaves when you give them everything. It is what appears in their face when, for the first time, you give them less access to you. Because your first boundary does something kindness cannot do. It reveals who respected your heart and who had simply become accustomed to using it. Lesson 1. Kindness is a gift, not permanent access. My dear sister, being kind does not mean everyone deserves unlimited access to you. Your kindness is something beautiful. It is part of your character. But when you are always available, always fixing problems, always saying yes, people can slowly stop seeing your kindness as a gift. They begin to expect it. And the moment something becomes expected, appreciation often disappears. You can care for someone without answering every call. You can love someone without solving every problem. You can help people without carrying responsibilities that belong to them. Islam teaches generosity, mercy, and good character, but it does not ask you to become exhausted just to keep everyone comfortable. A kind woman needs boundaries, because without them, people may begin taking from her heart without ever asking what it costs her. So remain generous, remain gentle, but remember this: your good heart is a gift people should appreciate, not a door they are allowed to leave permanently open. Lesson 2. Overgiving can turn gratitude into expectation. My dear sister, there is a quiet danger in giving too much for too long. At first, people appreciate what you do. They thank you for your time. They notice your effort. They remember your sacrifices. But when you keep giving without limits, something can slowly change. What was once appreciated starts becoming expected. You helped once, so they expect you to help again. You canceled your plans once, so they assume you will always adjust. You carried their burden many times, so now they become upset when you finally say, I cannot. This is how kindness can accidentally teach people entitlement. The problem is not that you have a generous heart. The problem begins when your generosity has no boundaries. You do not have to keep proving that you are a good woman by exhausting yourself. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is allow people to carry what belongs to them. Because when you constantly rescue someone, they may never learn to respect the effort it takes to rescue them. Give with love, but do not give so endlessly that people forget your kindness was ever a choice. A gift repeated without boundaries can slowly become an expectation, and expectations are rarely treated with gratitude. Lesson 3. Some people love your availability more than your heart. My dear sister, not everyone who stays close to you is attached to your heart. Some are attached to your availability. They love that you answer quickly. They love that you always listen. They love that you make time. They love that you fix what they refuse to fix themselves. And sometimes you only discover the difference when you become less available. When you stop replying immediately, they become cold. When you stop solving every problem, they become distant. When you finally protect your time, they accuse you of changing. That reaction tells you something important. They may have been more comfortable with what you provided than connected to who you truly are. Real love does not disappear because you need rest. Real respect does not punish you for having limits. A person who values your heart will still value you when you are tired, unavailable, quiet, or unable to give them what they want. So do not measure every relationship by how much people need you. Ask yourself something deeper. Would they still care about me if I stopped making their life easier? Because being useful can attract people. But being truly valued means they still choose you when you have nothing to offer except yourself. Lesson 4. Your first no will identify everyone who benefited from your yes. My dear sister, sometimes you do not truly know what kind of relationship you have with someone until you disappoint them once. As long as you are saying yes, everything feels peaceful. You answer the call, you change your plans, you listen for hours, you forgive quickly. You help before they even ask. You make yourself available when you are tired. You carry responsibilities that were never really yours. And because you are naturally kind, you may think all of this is simply love. Then one day you cannot do it. Maybe you are exhausted. Maybe you finally have your own responsibilities. Maybe your heart has reached its limit. Maybe you simply realize that what they keep asking from you is no longer healthy. So for the first time you say no, and suddenly the relationship changes. The person who used to call you kind now calls you selfish. The person who praised your heart now questions your character. The person who said, I appreciate everything you do, becomes angry because you did not do one more thing. That moment can hurt. But it can also reveal something you desperately needed to see. Because sometimes your first no tells you more about a relationship than 100 yeses ever could. When people genuinely value you, they may feel disappointed by your answer, but they will still respect your right to give it. They will understand that you are human. They will understand that you become tired. They will understand that your time belongs to you too. They will not demand that you prove your love by abandoning yourself. But someone who has quietly become entitled to you may react very differently. Your boundary will feel like betrayal to them, not because you actually betrayed them, but because they became comfortable receiving a version of you who rarely resisted. That is an important difference. Some people are not angry because your decision is wrong. They are angry because your decision is inconvenient for them. For a long time, your kindness may have protected you from discovering this. You kept giving, so they never needed to reveal how they would behave if you stopped. You kept adjusting, so they never needed to learn how to compromise. You kept forgiving, so they never had to face consequences. You kept rescuing, so they never learned how much work you were carrying. Your kindness created peace, but sometimes it created peace by making you pay the entire price. That is not sustainable, and it is not the only way to be a good woman. You can be compassionate without becoming responsible for everyone's comfort. You can be generous without becoming endlessly available. You can support someone without becoming the person they automatically run to every time they refuse to solve their own problems. And you can say no without turning your heart hard. This is where many kind women struggle. They are not afraid of the word no itself. They are afraid of what might happen after they say it. What if they become upset? What if they stop speaking to me? What if they think I have changed? What if they tell others I am selfish? What if they leave? So they continue saying yes to things their heart is begging them to stop doing. They call it kindness, but deep inside, fear has started controlling their generosity. And when fear controls your generosity, giving no longer feels peaceful. It feels compulsory. You begin helping because you are afraid of guilt. You begin agreeing because you are afraid of conflict. You begin sacrificing because you are afraid someone will withdraw their affection. That is a dangerous way to live, because now another person does not even need to force you. Your fear of disappointing them does the forcing for them. My dear sister, a mature heart understands that disappointment is not always harm. Sometimes someone will be disappointed because you chose what was reasonable. Sometimes they will be disappointed because you protected your family. Sometimes they will be disappointed because you needed rest. Sometimes they will be disappointed because you finally stopped carrying something they should have been carrying themselves. Their disappointment does not automatically mean your decision was wrong, and their anger does not automatically mean you owe them an apology. Look carefully at what happens when you establish a healthy limit. The person who loves you may ask questions. They may need time to adjust, but eventually they learn where your boundary is. The person who only loved your usefulness may begin punishing you. They become distant. They make sarcastic comments. They remind you of everything they have ever done for you. They compare the new you to the old you. They say, you were never like this before. Of course you were not. Before, you were afraid to say no. Before, you thought being good meant never becoming difficult for anyone. Before, you believed protecting a relationship meant absorbing every inconvenience yourself. Growth changes that, and the people who benefited from the old pattern may not celebrate the new one. That does not mean you should return to the old version of yourself. Sometimes a person's complaint is actually evidence that your boundary is working. Think about it. If someone respected your limits from the beginning, your boundary would not feel like a crisis. But if someone had been benefiting from the absence of boundaries, the moment you create one, they feel the difference immediately. This is why a single no can expose years of hidden entitlement. Maybe you always hosted everyone. The first time you cannot, someone becomes offended. Maybe you always lend money. The first time you refuse, someone accuses you of becoming greedy. Maybe you always listen to another person's problems late into the night. The first time you say, I need to rest, they behave as though you no longer care. Maybe your relatives expect you to solve every disagreement. The first time you step away, they blame you for the tension that already existed. Maybe a friend expects immediate replies. The first time you take space, she decides you have become distant. Notice the pattern. They are measuring your love by your obedience to their expectations. But love cannot survive when one person must constantly prove it through exhaustion. A healthy relationship contains room for two complete human beings, two sets of needs, two schedules, two emotional limits, two voices, two people who can sometimes say yes and sometimes say no. If only one person is allowed to have needs, that is not balance. If only one person must adjust, that is not fairness. If only one person is punished whenever she stops giving, something deeper is wrong. My dear sister, there is another reason your first no matters. It teaches people how to treat you from now on. Every time you say yes while deeply wanting to say no, you are giving someone information. You are showing them what they can continue expecting. You are teaching them that your discomfort will probably not stop you. You are showing them that guilt works on you. You are showing them that enough pressure may change your answer. People learn our limits partly from what we repeatedly tolerate. That is why boundaries require consistency. If you say no today, then allow yourself to be guilted into yes. 5 minutes later, the other person learns something. They learn that your no is only the beginning of a negotiation. But when your no is calm, respectful, and consistent, something changes. People begin to understand that kindness does not mean automatic permission. You do not need to become rude. You do not need to give a long speech. You do not need to prove that your reason is important enough. Sometimes a simple answer is enough. I cannot do that today. I am not available. I need to think about it. That does not work for me. I can help with this part, but I cannot take responsibility for everything. Simple words. But for someone who spent years over-explaining herself, these words can feel revolutionary. You may feel guilty at first. That does not necessarily mean you are doing something wrong. Sometimes guilt appears simply because you are doing something unfamiliar. Your old pattern says, keep everyone happy. Your new wisdom says, be kind, but be honest about your capacity. Those two voices may fight for a while, but eventually, peace comes when your life stops being organized around avoiding everyone's disappointment. And there is something else you must remember. If saying one respectful no destroys a relationship, the relationship may have been depending on your lack of boundaries more than you realized. A strong relationship can survive limits. A sincere relationship can survive inconvenience. Real affection can survive the sentence, I cannot. You should not have to buy love with constant access. You should not have to maintain friendship with endless favors. You should not have to earn your place in someone's heart by making sure they never experience disappointment from you. You are allowed to be a person, not a service. And perhaps one of the greatest signs of emotional maturity is learning that someone can misunderstand your boundary and you can still keep it. You do not have to chase every person who becomes cold. You do not have to immediately soften every limit because someone looks unhappy. Give people the dignity of experiencing their own emotions. They can be disappointed. They can adjust. They can solve a problem without you. They can learn to hear no. You are not responsible for removing every uncomfortable feeling from everyone around you. You are responsible for how you behave. Be respectful. Be fair. Be compassionate. But do not abandon yourself simply because another person dislikes your decision. Your kindness becomes much healthier when it is chosen freely. When you say yes because you truly want to help, the heart feels different. There is sincerity, there is peace, there is willingness. But when every yes comes from fear, resentment begins growing underneath it. You may smile while helping someone, yet secretly feel angry. You may say, "It is fine," while your heart says, "I cannot keep doing this." That hidden resentment is often the result of boundaries that were never spoken. So do not wait until your kindness turns bitter. Speak earlier. Say no before you begin hating the people you once loved helping. Protect the beauty of your generosity by giving it limits, and watch carefully who respects those limits. Some people may surprise you. They will understand. They will say, "Of course, take care of yourself." They will ask what you need. They will still call when they do not need a favor. They will still value your presence when you are not useful to them. Keep those people close. Others may reveal that the relationship was built around what you provided. That revelation can hurt, but clarity is better than spending another 10 years confusing dependence with love. So when your first no changes someone's behavior, do not only ask, "Why are they upset with me?" Ask something deeper. What were they receiving from my lack of boundaries that they are afraid of losing now? The answer may change how you see the entire relationship. Your no is not always the end of kindness. Sometimes it is the beginning of truth. And the people who truly value you will learn to love the woman who has boundaries, not only the woman who made everything easy. Lesson 5. The wrong people call your self-respect a change of heart. My dear sister, one of the strangest things happens when a woman who has always overgiven finally starts respecting herself. People say she has changed, and sometimes they are right. She has changed, but not in the way they mean. She has stopped answering every request with yes. She has stopped explaining herself for hours. She has stopped accepting disrespect just because it comes from someone she loves. She has stopped apologizing for needing space. She has stopped returning to conversations that always leave her feeling small. She has stopped confusing patience with endless tolerance. She has stopped believing that keeping peace requires losing her own. Yes, she changed, but perhaps the old version of her was surviving, not flourishing. Perhaps the old version was afraid. Perhaps the old version believed that being loved required being easy to deal with. And perhaps the new version finally understands that a good heart and self-respect can exist in the same woman. Not everyone will celebrate that realization. Some people loved the old arrangement. When you never challenged anything, they could behave however they wanted. When you forgave immediately, they did not need to reflect. When you always returned, they did not fear losing your trust. When you always adjusted, they never needed to meet you halfway. So when you change the arrangement, they may call it a change in your personality. They may say, "You are becoming difficult. You think you are better than everyone. You have too much attitude now. You used to be so sweet. Why are you making everything a problem?" Sometimes these statements are worth considering. We should all remain open to sincere correction. But sometimes those statements are not correction. They are resistance. They are the language people use when the version of you they could easily access no longer exists. There is a difference between becoming arrogant and becoming clear. There is a difference between becoming cold and becoming careful. There is a difference between punishing people and protecting yourself. There is a difference between disrespect and boundaries. Learning those differences matters. Because many kind women can be pulled back into unhealthy patterns simply by being told, "You have changed." The sentence frightens them. They immediately begin questioning themselves. Am I becoming selfish? Am I becoming a bad person? Maybe I should just let this go. And suddenly the boundary disappears. The same cycle begins again. My dear sister, growth should change you. Wisdom should change you. Experience should change what you tolerate. If you went through painful situations and learned nothing about how to protect your heart, what was the lesson? You are not supposed to remain equally easy to hurt forever. Some wounds should teach you discernment. Some disappointments should teach you to notice patterns. Some betrayals should teach you that apologies without change are only words. Some seasons should teach you to stop handing everyone the same level of access. That is not bitterness. That is maturity when carried with balance. A mature woman can remain compassionate while becoming more selective. She can forgive someone without placing them back in the same position. She can wish someone well without returning to the same unhealthy closeness. She can love relatives while refusing to participate in destructive behavior. She can care about a friend while refusing to become her permanent emergency service. She can be polite to someone she no longer trusts. She can choose distance without choosing hatred. This is one of the most powerful forms of self-respect. You stop believing that every relationship must either be completely close or completely broken. Sometimes the healthiest place for someone in your life is simply farther away. No hatred, no revenge, no dramatic announcement, just less access, less explanation, less emotional responsibility, less opportunity to repeat the same harm. Some people will notice this and say, you are different. Let them notice. The question is not whether you changed. The question is whether you changed towards something healthier. Ask yourself, am I becoming more peaceful? Am I becoming more honest? Am I learning to communicate instead of silently resent? Am I protecting myself without humiliating others? Am I making decisions from wisdom rather than revenge? Am I becoming harder to manipulate while remaining easy to respect? If the answer is yes, then do not let someone's discomfort with your growth convince you to shrink again. Sometimes people want you to remain the version of yourself that caused you the most pain because that version caused them the least inconvenience. Read that carefully. The version of you that exhausted herself may have been very convenient for everyone else. She never said no. She never asked for much. She rarely complained. She gave second chances before people had earned them. She smiled through things that wounded her. Of course, some people miss her. She made their life easier. But you are allowed to ask whether that version of you was healthy. You are allowed to mourn her and still never become her again. Perhaps she was doing the best she knew how to do. Honor her for surviving. Then allow yourself to become wiser. Self-respect does not require you to become loud. In fact, some of the strongest boundaries are quiet. You stop entering arguments that never produce anything. You stop trying to convince someone to recognize your value. You stop sending long messages explaining obvious disrespect. You stop begging people to understand why something hurt you after they have already shown they do not care. You stop running after relationships where only your effort keeps the connection alive. There is power in that quietness, not because you are trying to punish anyone, but because you finally understand that every person is responsible for what they bring into a relationship. You cannot create mutual respect alone. You cannot create honesty alone. You cannot create trust alone. You cannot create healthy communication alone. You can bring your half. They must bring theirs. If you constantly provide both halves, you are not maintaining a relationship. You are carrying it. And anything you carry alone eventually becomes heavy. Sometimes you become so accustomed to carrying relationships that the weight feels normal. You are always the one who reaches out after conflict. Always the one who repairs misunderstandings. Always the one who remembers birthdays. Always the one who checks in. Always the one who gives another chance. Always the one who says, maybe they did not mean it. Then one day you stop, not because you no longer care, because you need to know whether the relationship can stand without you holding every wall. And sometimes it cannot. That truth can be painful, but it is valuable. You discover who knows how to come toward you. You discover who only knows how to receive you. You discover who notices your silence because they miss you, and who notices it only because something they used to receive is missing. Do not fear these discoveries. Clarity protects you from investing another year where there is no mutuality. Self-respect also changes how you respond to disrespect. In the past, perhaps someone could speak to you badly and then act normal the next day. You accepted it because you wanted peace. Now you may say, we need to address what happened. That is growth. Perhaps someone repeatedly makes jokes at your expense. Before, you laughed so they would not call you sensitive. Now you say, please do not speak about me that way. That is growth. Perhaps someone expects access to every private detail of your life. Before, you answered because you feared appearing rude. Now you say, I would rather keep that private. That is growth. None of this requires cruelty. You can speak gently and still mean what you say. You can lower your voice without lowering your standards. You can be respectful without surrendering your dignity. And that balance is important, because sometimes after years of being too accommodating, a person swings to the opposite extreme. She becomes harsh. She treats every request as manipulation. She begins seeing enemies everywhere. That is not healing either. The goal is not to become suspicious of everyone. The goal is discernment. A boundary should protect your heart, not imprison it. Self-respect should make your relationships healthier, not make relationships impossible. There are people who deserve your softness. There are people who will value your generosity. There are people who will never use your vulnerability against you. Do not punish good people because bad people taught you painful lessons. Instead, learn to give different levels of access based on character. Someone who has shown honesty receives trust. Someone who has shown inconsistency receives caution. Someone who repeatedly violates your boundaries receives distance. This is not hatred, it is wisdom. Not every person belongs in the same place in your life, and you do not have to feel guilty for recognizing that. My dear sister, sometimes the accusation "you have changed" is really another sentence wearing a disguise. It may mean you are no longer responding the way I trained you to respond. You no longer tolerate what you used to tolerate. My old methods are not working anymore. I can no longer make you feel guilty as easily. I no longer receive automatic access. When you understand this, you stop panicking every time someone comments on your growth. You listen, you reflect. If there is truth in their words, you correct yourself. But if their complaint is simply that you are harder to misuse, you do not have to apologize for that. You can say within your heart, yes, I changed, I learned, I healed, I became clearer, I stopped abandoning myself. There is nothing shameful about that. A woman with self-respect does not need everyone to approve of her decisions. She needs her decisions to be grounded in what is right. She does not make boundaries to look powerful. She makes them because she has finally understood the cost of having none. And perhaps the most beautiful part of this growth is that your kindness becomes more sincere. Before, you gave because you were afraid. Now, you give because you choose. Before, you agreed because you needed approval. Now, your yes actually means yes. Before, you smiled while secretly feeling resentment. Now, you are honest enough to say when something is too much. That is healthier for you and healthier for everyone around you. Because a relationship built on a false version of you can never become truly intimate. People cannot genuinely know you if you constantly hide your needs to remain acceptable. Let them meet the real woman, the one who is generous but has limits, the one who loves deeply but notices disrespect, the one who forgives but learns, the one who is gentle but cannot be endlessly pushed, the one who cares about people without making herself responsible for all of them. The right people will not require you to become smaller so they can feel comfortable. They will respect the woman you are becoming, and the people who cannot tolerate your self-respect may reveal that they were more attached to your convenience than your heart. So do not be afraid when someone tells you, you have changed. Sometimes your calmest answer is simply, I needed to. I needed to. Lesson 6, you can disappoint people without disobeying Allah. My dear sister, many women carry a fear they rarely say aloud. They fear that disappointing people makes them a bad person. Someone asks for help and immediately they feel responsible. A relative expects something and they feel guilty saying no. A friend wants their time and they cancel their own plans. Someone becomes upset and they rush to fix the person's feelings. Over time, pleasing people becomes connected to goodness in their mind. If everyone is happy with me, I must be doing something right. If someone is upset with me, perhaps I have failed. But this way of thinking can quietly become a prison, because there will never be a life in which everyone approves of every healthy decision you make. Different people want different things from you. One person wants more time. Another wants more money. Another wants more attention. Another wants you to agree with them. Another wants you to remain silent. Another wants access to information that is private. Another wants you to solve a problem they created. If your definition of goodness is nobody must ever be disappointed with me, you will eventually lose yourself trying to satisfy conflicting expectations. You cannot live that way, and you were never asked to. Your responsibility is not to make yourself endlessly convenient. Your responsibility is to live with sincerity, fairness, good character, wisdom, and obedience to what is right. That distinction changes everything. You can disappoint a person and still have made a responsible decision. A child may be disappointed because a mother says no to something harmful. A friend may be disappointed because you cannot attend an event. A relative may be disappointed because you refuse to participate in gossip. Someone may be disappointed because you will not lend money you cannot afford to lose. Someone may be disappointed because you finally insist that they speak to you respectfully. Their disappointment is real. but their disappointment does not automatically create guilt for you. This is where emotional maturity begins. You learn to separate two questions. Are they unhappy with me? And have I actually done something wrong? Those are not the same question. Many kind people treat them as though they are identical. Someone becomes upset, so they assume they must repair the situation. Someone stops speaking to them, so they immediately apologize. Someone accuses them of selfishness, so they abandon the boundary. But sometimes another person's emotional reaction is simply their reaction. It is not a verdict on your character. You still reflect. You still ask whether you were fair. You still correct yourself when necessary. But you do not hand every person the authority to define your morality according to how comfortable your choices make them feel. That is too much power to give another human being. My dear sister, people-pleasing often looks gentle from the outside, but inside it is exhausting. You replay conversations. You worry about how you sounded. You wonder whether someone is angry. You send another message because their first reply seemed short. You say yes before checking whether you actually have the capacity. You apologize for things that do not require an apology. You explain decisions again and again because you cannot tolerate being misunderstood. And eventually, your entire emotional life begins revolving around reactions you cannot control. That is no way to live. There is a healthier way. Do what is right with a good heart. Speak respectfully. Make your intention clean. Then allow people to respond however they choose. You are responsible for your conduct. You are not responsible for controlling every interpretation of your conduct. Sometimes you can explain yourself perfectly and someone will still choose the version of the story that benefits them. Sometimes you can be gentle and they will still call you harsh because they wanted a yes. Sometimes you can give 10 times and they will focus on the one time you did not. Sometimes you can sacrifice for years and still be called selfish the first time you protect yourself. That reality is painful, but accepting it frees you. It teaches you to stop living as though human approval is a score you must maintain. There will always be someone who believes you should have done more. If you give an hour, someone wishes you gave 2. If you give money, someone wonders why it was not more. If you visit once, someone asks why you do not visit twice. If you answer late, someone questions whether you care. If you set a boundary, someone sees rejection. If you choose rest, someone sees laziness. If you choose privacy, someone sees distance. You cannot build your identity around satisfying every interpretation. You will collapse. And often, the woman who spends her life trying to avoid disappointing everyone eventually disappoints herself the most. She looks around one day and realizes, I was available for everybody except myself. She knows everyone's needs, but she does not know what she needs. She knows everyone's schedule, but she has no time for her own life. She has protected everyone's feelings, but she has ignored her own heart for years. She has become so skilled at being useful that she no longer knows who she is when nobody needs anything. This is why saying no can sometimes be an act of honesty. You are not pretending you have more energy than you do. You are not promising what you cannot deliver. You are not giving with resentment. You are acknowledging the limits Allah placed inside every human being. You have limited time, limited energy, limited emotional capacity, limited money, limited attention. These limits do not make you defective. They make you human. Even the most generous woman cannot be everywhere. She cannot fix everyone. She cannot carry every family problem. She cannot answer every call. She cannot absorb unlimited stress and remain well. Wisdom means deciding where your responsibilities truly lie. You may need to ask, is this actually mine to carry? Am I helping or am I preventing this person from taking responsibility? Am I saying yes because it is right or because I am afraid of what they will think if I say no? Would I still agree if I knew they would not become angry? That last question reveals a lot. If fear is the only reason behind your yes, perhaps the decision needs another look, because a sincere yes and a frightened yes may sound identical from the outside. But inside the heart, they are completely different. A sincere yes says, I want to help. A frightened yes says, I am afraid not to. A sincere yes has generosity inside it. A frightened yes has anxiety. A sincere yes may tire the body but often leaves dignity intact. A frightened yes creates resentment because you feel you had no real choice. My dear sister, your faith should not be used against you by people who want endless access. Sometimes someone may try to make you feel religiously guilty for having a healthy boundary. They may use words like duty, kindness, patience, family, forgiveness, or respect while ignoring the responsibility they also have toward you. Be careful. Beautiful principles should not become tools of manipulation. Patience does not mean allowing someone to mistreat you forever. Forgiveness does not mean removing every consequence. Respect does not mean surrendering your voice. Family does not mean one person can repeatedly violate another person's dignity without limits. Kindness does not mean agreeing to everything. And being a good woman does not mean becoming easy to exploit. You can remain respectful while declining. You can maintain good character while stepping away from a harmful conversation. You can wish someone well without placing yourself back into the same cycle. You can forgive in your heart while changing the level of access they receive. These things can exist together. That is balance. Sometimes the hardest person to disappoint is not a stranger. It is someone you love deeply. Perhaps your mother expects something. Perhaps your father expects something. Perhaps your siblings depend on you too much. Perhaps your husband, relatives, friends, or community have become accustomed to a version of you who almost never says no. These situations require wisdom and gentleness, not rebellion, not arrogance, not harshness. But wisdom does not mean automatic surrender. Relationships have responsibilities, yes, but healthy responsibilities should not erase your humanity. There are times you will sacrifice for people you love. There are times you will inconvenience yourself because love requires effort. There are moments when helping someone while tired is a beautiful act. The message is not never sacrifice. The message is do not make self-erasure your permanent definition of love. Sacrifice should have meaning. It should not become your entire identity. There must be a difference between generosity and being consumed. You should be able to give without disappearing, and you should be able to rest without feeling morally guilty for existing. One powerful change happens when you stop trying to immediately repair every person's disappointment. Suppose you say, "I cannot come today." They reply coldly. Your old pattern may tell you to send another paragraph, then another, then offer a different day, then apologize repeatedly, then perhaps change your answer completely. Try something different. Let the disappointment breathe. You have communicated respectfully. You have not insulted anyone. You have not broken a genuine obligation. You simply cannot do what they wanted. Allow that reality to exist. You may be surprised. Sometimes the person adjusts. Sometimes the conflict disappears because you did not feed it. Sometimes people learn that becoming cold will no longer change your decisions, and sometimes they stay upset. Even then, you survive. That may sound simple, but for a lifelong people pleaser, discovering that she can survive someone's displeasure is life-changing. She realizes, they were unhappy and I did not collapse. They misunderstood me and life continued. They called me selfish and I still knew my intention. They were disappointed and I did not have to betray myself to remove their disappointment. This is emotional freedom. You stop living like every frown is an emergency. You stop treating every cold response as a command to chase. You stop assuming silence always means you have done something wrong. And you begin making decisions from principles rather than fear. Of course, humility still matters. If you hurt someone unfairly, apologize. If you speak harshly, correct it. If your boundary was actually punishment disguised as self-care, examine yourself. If you made a selfish decision, be honest about it. Self-respect should never become an excuse to avoid accountability. But accountability works both ways. You do not owe an apology for every emotion another person experiences around your boundaries. Sometimes you did nothing wrong. Sometimes they simply did not get what they wanted. Learn the difference. Your heart becomes steadier when you stop confusing those two things. My dear sister, the people who genuinely love you will eventually understand that you cannot always be available. They may not like every answer. Healthy people do not need to like every answer. They simply understand that your no does not erase your love. And if someone requires constant compliance as proof of affection, that relationship needs examination. Love should contain room for honesty. Love should contain room for rest. Love should contain room for different opinions. Love should contain room for a respectful no. Otherwise, it is not love that is holding you there. It may be fear. So the next time you must make a difficult decision, do not ask only, who will be disappointed? Ask, what is right? What is fair? What can I genuinely carry? What decision allows me to remain kind without becoming resentful? Then make the best decision you can. Somebody may misunderstand, somebody may complain, somebody may need time to adjust, but human disappointment is not the same as divine disobedience. You can disappoint someone and still remain a woman of good character. And sometimes protecting what is right requires enough courage to let someone be unhappy with you. Lesson 7. Stay soft but become difficult to use. My dear sister, after everything we have discussed, the answer is not to become cold. It is not to stop helping people. It is not to build walls around your heart. It is not to look at every request with suspicion. And it is certainly not to become harsh simply because kindness has cost you before. The goal is more beautiful than that. Stay soft, but become difficult to use. Keep the heart, change the access, keep the compassion, change the boundaries, keep the generosity, change the belief that everyone is entitled to it. Keep your ability to love. Lose the fear that love requires self-abandonment. This is the balance many women spend years trying to find. At one extreme is the woman who gives everything. She has almost no boundaries. She answers everyone. She carries everyone. She forgives without change. She says yes automatically. She allows people to interrupt her peace whenever they wish. She is terrified of being called selfish, so she continues giving until she is emotionally empty. At the other extreme is the woman who has been hurt so many times that she closes completely. Nobody gets close. Every request feels suspicious. Every mistake becomes proof someone cannot be trusted. She protects herself so strongly that love cannot reach her either. Neither extreme gives the heart what it needs. A healthy woman learns a third way. She stays warm without becoming available to exploitation. She learns how to give and how to stop, how to forgive and still remember the lesson, how to help without taking ownership of another person's life, how to be gentle while speaking clearly, how to care deeply without handing every person the keys to her peace. That is strength, not loud strength, not performative strength, quiet strength. The strength of knowing your heart can remain tender without remaining unprotected. Many people confuse softness with weakness because they have only seen softness without boundaries. But softness with wisdom is extremely powerful. A woman can say, I understand what you are going through, and still say, I cannot do that for you. She can say, I forgive you, and still say, things cannot return to how they were. She can say, I love you, and still say, you may not speak to me that way. She can say, I want good for you, and still walk away from what repeatedly harms her. Notice how none of these statements require hatred. None require cruelty. They require clarity. And clarity is what makes a kind woman difficult to use. People can use confusion. They can use guilt. They can use fear. They can use your need to be liked. They can use your habit of over-explaining. They can use your inability to tolerate conflict. They can use your desperation to keep every relationship. But it becomes much harder to use a woman who knows what she can and cannot give. A woman who understands that no is a complete answer, a woman who does not need to be seen as perfect, a woman who can survive being misunderstood, a woman who notices repeated patterns, a woman who distinguishes apology from change, a woman who can love someone without becoming responsible for them. That woman is still kind. She is simply no longer easy to control. My dear sister, becoming difficult to use begins with understanding your own patterns. You need to know what makes you abandon your boundaries. For some women, it is guilt. The moment someone says, after everything I have done for you, they surrender. For others, it is silence. If someone stops replying, they panic and chase. For some, it is tears. The moment another person becomes emotional, they immediately take responsibility. For others, it is anger. They will agree to almost anything to prevent someone from raising their voice. And for some, it is the fear of losing the relationship. They tolerate what they know is wrong because they would rather be mistreated than left. Know your weak door, because that is often the door people repeatedly enter through. If guilt controls you, learn to sit with guilt without immediately obeying it. If silence controls you, learn that you do not have to chase everyone who withdraws. If anger controls you, learn that another person's raised voice does not automatically make their position correct. If abandonment controls you, learn that losing an unhealthy relationship may hurt less than losing yourself inside it. This awareness changes everything. Suddenly, you begin noticing what once happened automatically. Someone pressures you. You feel the old urge to surrender. But now there is a small space between their pressure and your answer. Inside that space, wisdom grows. You ask yourself, Do I actually want to do this? Is this reasonable? Why am I afraid to decline? What happens if I simply allow them to be disappointed? That small pause can save you from years of resentment. You do not owe anyone an immediate yes. You are allowed to think. You are allowed to check your schedule. You are allowed to say, let me get back to you. This is especially important for women who instinctively agree before they have even processed what is being asked. Train yourself to pause. Do not let another person's urgency automatically become your emergency. Someone can need an answer quickly without being entitled to control your decision. A pause gives your values time to speak before your fear speaks for you. And as you practice this, your yes becomes more meaningful. People begin receiving your generosity as generosity again because it is no longer guaranteed. You help because you choose to help. You visit because you want to visit. You listen because you have the capacity. You give because your heart is willing. That makes kindness beautiful again. When giving is compulsory, kindness becomes heavy. When giving is chosen, kindness stays alive. Another part of becoming difficult to use is learning to watch actions instead of words. Many kind women stay trapped because they fall in love with explanations. Someone hurts them. The person gives a beautiful explanation. They forgive. The same thing happens again. Another explanation arrives. They forgive again. Eventually, explanations replace change. My dear sister, words matter. Apologies matter. But patterns matter too. If someone repeatedly apologizes for the same behavior without doing anything differently, you are allowed to notice. You do not have to call them evil. You do not have to humiliate them. You simply stop allowing words to erase evidence. A sincere apology should eventually produce different behavior. Otherwise, you are not witnessing a mistake anymore. You are witnessing a pattern, and patterns require boundaries. A soft heart can acknowledge someone's pain. A wise mind still looks at what they repeatedly do. This protects you from becoming cruel without forcing you to remain naive. You can believe people are capable of change without assuming they have already changed. You can hope for the best while responding to what is actually happening. That is maturity. Also learn that kindness does not require unlimited disclosure. You do not need to tell everyone everything. Your private life does not belong to every person who asks questions. Your plans do not need to be announced before they are ready. Your struggles do not need to be explained to people who have not proven they can hold them carefully. Your relationship problems do not belong in every conversation. Your dreams do not need everyone's opinion. Sometimes protecting yourself simply means becoming more selective about what you share and with whom. Not everyone who asks is entitled to an answer. You can smile and say, I would rather keep that private. That sentence is not rude. Privacy is not dishonesty. Sometimes it is protection. And a woman becomes difficult to use when people cannot easily collect information about her vulnerabilities and later use it to pressure her. Your heart deserves safe places. Give people deeper access slowly. Let character earn closeness. Do not hand someone your entire emotional world simply because they showed interest in you. Watch how they handle small things first. Do they keep confidence? Do they respect your no? Do they celebrate your success without competing? Do they show up when they need nothing? Do they speak respectfully when they are angry? Do they accept responsibility when they are wrong? Do they make you feel safe enough to be honest? These things reveal character. Trust should grow from evidence, not from loneliness, not from pressure, not from how charming someone is during the beginning of a relationship. This is how you stay soft without becoming easy to misuse. You remain open to good people while becoming more careful with access. And there is another beautiful shift that happens. You stop needing to prove you are kind. A truly kind woman does not need to accept every request just so nobody can accuse her of being selfish. She knows who she is. She knows the difference between generosity and self-destruction. This confidence is powerful because manipulation often depends on your need to defend your identity. Someone says, a good daughter would do this. A real friend would help. If you cared about me, you would say yes. You have changed, and because you desperately need to prove, no, I am still good, you surrender. But when you know your character, those sentences lose some of their power. You can calmly think, I know I care about you, and my answer is still no. That is a strong woman, not because she is heartless, because she no longer allows accusations to control her decisions. She does not need to perform goodness for every person watching. She tries to live it sincerely. There is freedom in that. My dear sister, do not misunderstand this lesson as an invitation to become selfish. There are times when kindness should inconvenience you. There are times when love means showing up tired. There are times when family needs sacrifice. There are times when generosity costs money, time, sleep, comfort, or effort. A life where you only help when it is effortless would not be generosity at all. The issue is not inconvenience. The issue is exploitation, and the difference often appears in the pattern. Healthy sacrifice moves in both directions across time. Healthy people notice what you give. They do not demand it endlessly. They care whether you are tired. They feel gratitude. They sometimes carry you too. They respect your limits even when your limits inconvenience them. Exploitation looks different. Your giving is treated as normal. Their giving is treated as exceptional. Your mistakes are remembered. Their mistakes are excused. Your no creates drama. Their no is considered reasonable. Your needs feel like a burden. Their needs become emergencies. Pay attention to patterns like these. You do not need to become obsessed with counting every favor. Relationships are not business transactions, but persistent imbalance contains information. If you always leave a relationship more drained than loved, ask why. If your kindness is always flowing in one direction, ask why. If a person only appears when they need something, notice it. If someone becomes less affectionate whenever you are less useful, notice it. You are not judging their soul. You are observing behavior. And behavior helps you decide what level of access is wise. Be especially careful with people who punish boundaries. A healthy person may dislike your boundary, but they can still respect it. An unhealthy person often attempts to break it. They argue, they shame, they guilt you, they recruit other people to pressure you. They become unusually sweet until you surrender. They threaten distance. They remind you of your past. They act wounded whenever you choose yourself. When you recognize this, do not keep changing the boundary simply because the pressure increased. Sometimes pressure increases precisely because the old method of controlling you is no longer working. Stand calmly. You do not need to become louder than them. Consistency is louder than argument. Your repeated behavior teaches people what your words mean. If you say, please do not speak to me like that, and continue the conversation every time they do, the boundary has no consequence. A boundary is not only a sentence, it is a decision about what you will do when that line is crossed. Perhaps you end the conversation, perhaps you leave the room, perhaps you reduce contact, perhaps you stop sharing private information, perhaps you no longer participate in a certain situation. This is not revenge. A consequence is not the same as punishment. A healthy consequence says, if this behavior continues, I will change my participation. You are controlling your own actions, not trying to control theirs. That is the heart of a boundary. You do not say, you must become a different person. You say, if this continues, I cannot remain this close. People are free to choose their behavior. You are free to choose your access. Understanding this removes so much unnecessary conflict. You stop trying to force people to become who you need. You simply observe who they choose to be. Then you make wise decisions accordingly. This is particularly important when someone keeps telling you, this is just how I am. Believe the information. If they are telling you they do not intend to change, stop building your peace around the hope that they eventually will. You can care about who someone could become while protecting yourself from who they repeatedly choose to be today. Hope is beautiful, but hope without boundaries can become a place where years disappear. My dear sister, there is another layer to staying soft. Do not allow difficult experiences to steal your tenderness toward yourself. Sometimes a woman learns to say no to others but continues saying cruel things to herself. She calls herself foolish for what she tolerated. She is angry that she trusted. She feels ashamed that she did not see the pattern sooner. Be careful. You were learning. Perhaps you stayed because you loved deeply. Perhaps you gave because generosity is natural to you. Perhaps you did not have the language for boundaries. Perhaps nobody taught you that good women are allowed to have limits. You can learn without humiliating the old version of yourself. Say, I understand now. I will choose differently now. That is enough. Shame does not have to become your teacher. Wisdom can teach you more gently. And as you become wiser, do not make your heart smaller. Make your standards clearer. Still help the elderly person who needs a hand. Still listen when a sincere friend is hurting. Still give when you can. Still be the person who makes people feel seen. Still forgive human mistakes. Still believe in mercy. Still offer warmth. The world does not need fewer kind women. It needs kind women whose kindness cannot easily be turned against them. Women who know that compassion and discernment belong together. Women who can recognize pain without becoming responsible for fixing every person who carries it. Women who can love deeply without losing judgment. Women who can forgive without reopening every door. Women who can support others without abandoning their own responsibilities. Women who understand that being gentle is not the same as being endlessly accessible. That is the woman you are becoming. Not cold, clear, not selfish, balanced, not suspicious, wise, not unavailable, intentional, not hard-hearted, hard to exploit. And there is a profound peace in becoming that woman, because eventually your life becomes quieter. Not because nobody needs anything, not because difficult people disappear, but because you no longer automatically surrender your peace whenever another person makes a demand. You pause, you think, you choose. You help when helping is right. You decline when declining is necessary. You forgive without forgetting every lesson. You stop explaining your worth to those committed to misunderstanding it. You stop chasing people who punish you for becoming healthier. You stop proving your love through exhaustion. You stop measuring goodness by how much of yourself you can lose. And slowly, something returns. Your energy returns. Your joy returns. Your ability to give sincerely returns. Your relationships become clearer. The people who truly love you adjust to the healthier version of you. The people who only loved your convenience often become easier to recognize. And most importantly, you stop fighting yourself every time you need a boundary. You understand, my softness is not permission. My patience is not unlimited access. My forgiveness is not permission to repeat the same harm. My kindness is not an invitation to use me. And my dear sister, carry this final truth with you. Do not become so hard that nobody can love you simply because a few people did not know how to value your softness. Keep your beautiful heart. Keep your compassion. Keep your generosity. Keep the part of you that wants to make life lighter for others, but place wisdom beside it. Let boundaries stand beside kindness. Let self-respect stand beside patience. Let discernment stand beside forgiveness. Then your kindness will no longer be weakness in the hands of the wrong people. It will become what it was always meant to be, a beautiful gift you choose to give, not a resource everyone is entitled to take. Stay soft, stay sincere, stay generous, but never again believe that becoming a good woman requires becoming convenient for everyone. Stay soft, but become difficult to use. My dear sister, never lose the softness Allah placed in your heart. Just stop giving people unlimited access to it. Be kind without becoming easy to use. Be generous without becoming exhausted. Be loving without disappearing inside everyone else's needs. And remember, the right people will never need your self-neglect in order to feel loved.